carry that pain around with you all the
absolutely.
time.
Absolutely. I was searching for a certain inner peace that had eluded me.
Right.
And part of finding an inner peace, really, I think it comes down to two things. One, you have to find a certain amount of forgiveness for yourself. And in my experience, some people can forgive themselves incredibly easily, meaning they forgive themselves and they just say, well, you know what, I screwed up, but I can move on from this, and it's enough. In my case, I actually had to do things in order to forgive myself. I had to accomplish things to say, well, look, since I've accomplished this now I can forgive myself from the past. In my case, meeting up with and being able to handle myself with my ex-fiancée was my moment of redemption. And when I finally did get my ex-fiancée back, even though the relationship, once I got her back, didn't last for 3 months, I found a certain closure on that because I was able to say, well, I'm going to go back, I'm going to get her. I did everything I've worked on in terms of my own development, made it worth it, and that was my moment of redemption. So I think self-forgiveness is a big part of that.
What about forgiveness of things that transpired in the past? I mean, did you... I guess my question is this. I would imagine for anybody that when we become adults, we're also bringing into adulthood and our intimate relationships is stuff that things that have been said to us, malicious things that have been said to us, or done to us when we were, say, in junior high school or by our, let's say, abusive parents or, those sorts of things. Did you have to also deal with those as well and really almost like rebuild your self-esteem?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I came from a very, very strict household where there were certain things that, despite the fact that I was a man or a born male, I still had certain restrictions that lots of families reserve for their daughters. I couldn't go out after a certain hour. And I remember there were times when, let's say, I would go out and I still would come home on time. Let's say my father said be home by midnight. I'd come home at midnight, and he would still be waiting up for me, and he would still have some nasty remarks for the fact that I went out to begin with at all. This led to experiencing panic attacks when I was an adult. So if I was out, even if I was at a friend's home, and this is, I'm looking way into the future here when I'm living on my own already. And here I am, I'm socializing at a friend's house on a nice little get-together, and, all of a sudden I start feeling a certain anxiety, and I check the time, and I realize, it must be 12:30 or 1 o'clock because the anxiety is starting to come in, and there was nothing in the area to trigger it other than the fact that I was out. So those are the types of things I had to deal with.
Well, and do you find, before we go on with your story, do you find that when you're doing your seminars and that sort of thing, do you recognize the sort of things in the men that come to learn from you, that they're
Absolutely.
carrying around those things as well?
Absolutely. And when I do see that in the men who come to my seminars, the first thing I do is I take a read on them, and I will usually speak to them as if they were a child in that moment. And that doesn't mean I go there and I baby them. It means that the way that you would speak seriously to a 5-year-old is going to be very different than the way you would speak seriously to a 25-year-old. So when somebody is maybe telling me about a lot of the pain that they've gone through or a particular issue that they're really struggling with, I'll actually talk to them as if they are a 5-year-old boy, and I'll say something, I want you to understand something. What happened here was not your fault. You can't control the actions of other people. And I will talk to them in this type of tonality, in this type of pacing, because I'm not dealing with an adult at that moment. Emotionally speaking, I'm dealing with a 5-year-old. I'm dealing with the kid who was hurt. So once you cater to the child within, then you can build the person up.
Yeah. And so you did that with yourself first.
I had to. It was a matter of coming to terms with the fact that you are not in control when you are a child as to what people will do to you. And you have to recognize that as a child you had no power to protect yourself, but as an adult you do. And to a certain extent, you have to give up some of the things that you identify with as being a child. And this is very difficult for people because growing up and becoming an adult is a scary thing. All of a sudden, you're responsible for a lot more than you ever were. You know, the reality is you always were responsible for it. But when you have to emotionally acknowledge that you need to grow up, that's an incredibly scary thing for some people, especially if they have any form of abuse from the time they were children. Because all of a sudden, the very scared little child who's already been abused so much, a part of them has to die in this process. And a child who hasn't received the type of love and caring that they needed as a child, it's a much more difficult process for them to let go.
Would it be fair to say that sometimes when guys have a hard time connecting with women, that it may not necessarily be because their quote-unquote game is off or because they're not doing the right things, that maybe it's because they're carrying around a lot of the stuff that does need to be dealt with?
You know, that's a very broad question, and I really want to give an accurate answer. Are there men who struggle with women because of what happened to them in childhood? Yes,